Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Lost Records Bloomin' Rage. I played it on the PS5, it's also available on the Xbox Series and PC. I waited for both of the tapes to come out because I didn't feel like doing this episodically. Now that being said, let's get into the story. You play as a 16-year-old girl named Swan, and it is 1995, specifically the summer of 95. Swan's hobbies involve taking hikes through the woods by herself, which is super dangerous, and recording everything on her little video camera. Which, because it was 95, it really wasn't that little. This leads her into an altercation with the local dickhead named Corey, and fortunately for her, a few other girls stand up for her, specifically Kat, Autumn, and Nora. This is the beginning of their friendship, and you basically live their 1995 experience. Now, that having been said, there are some interesting twists and turns along the way. There's character, not necessarily growth because they're all still so very young, but you get to learn more about each of them, their lives. One of them, of course, has a dramatic secret, and then there's some weird magical shit. But I'm not really going to go into that because it doesn't happen right away, so it does start to get into spoiler territory, but there is some like supernatural elements going on in this game, which I found interesting and I thought it was actually cool. I'm gonna say overall I enjoyed the story. Also, the tapes format comes from Swan, recording things on ye olde tapes. I guess I jumped a bit ahead. You also play as Swan as an adult. She has been reached out to by Autumn, despite the fact I guess they weren't supposed to. And really all the stuff that's going on in 1995 is them reliving memories, trying to remember what happened that year. Which is actually kind of cool because you're experiencing the memories as they are. Like, they're remembering this stuff that they have forgotten. And so that was kind of a cool format. And I really liked the, as I said earlier, growth, but I liked the characters. I liked where the story went. I liked the different elements up until the ending. And I'm not going to say the ending ruined this game, and obviously I'm not going to go into spoilers, but this has some serious Return of the King syndrome going on. Like, there are like 4 or 5 solid endings, and the problem I have with some of the endings, specifically the last 2, is they are 100% sequel bait. And I'm not going to sit there and say they ruined the game, they retroactively destroy my experience. They don't. I'm just not big on them, and they felt unnecessary. I'm okay with sequels, but I feel like sequel bait is kind of bullshit, especially when you don't know if you'll ever get a sequel. Like, unless they've already made that game and we know it's coming out next year or some shit, which we don't, then sequel bait kind of sucks. Now let's move on to the audio, and the first thing I'm going to say is the voiceover work is very well done. I think all of the actors did a great job bringing all of their characters to life, whether they're the dickhead, whether they're the lovable Swan, the rebellious Kat, Nora and Autumn, and all of that. I just think they did a really cool job, and they gave their characters life. I'm also going to say I enjoyed the music in this game. I thought it was a very well done soundtrack. As for the sound effects, overall I'm going to say the sound effects are good, but there were definitely more than a few occasions where I noticed missing sound effects. And then there was some just weird audio things going on, like they used a muffle thing for when people were indoors but you were outdoors, but it didn't always make sense, but because the camera was outdoors, the characters were still indoors, but you're hearing some muffle and it was weird. And it just didn't always work because somebody behind you in a doorway is not muffled to you, so it just didn't make sense. But then there was an entire part where Kat's audio was completely fucked compared to everybody else's, and by fucked I mean overly loud. For some reason, hers was just so much louder than everybody else. It's not like she was supposed to be screaming or anything, she was supposed to just be talking, and yet she was twice as loud as everyone else. Now let's get into gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and this is very much an interactive narrative adventure game, whatever you want to call it. But it is very, very obviously story driven. That is kind of Don't Nod's bread and butter. And in previous Don't Nod games, there have been like timed things, pseudo action events, etc. There is like none of that here. There are some timers on conversations and selecting what you're going to want to say, but beyond that, there's not a lot of like actual timed events where there's like serious dire consequences. It's kind of hard for there to be when you already are just reliving the memories as these people are telling them, essentially. But the fact that they still built tension doing that tells you that it was a good story. There is some free roam exploration since you are playing a Swan and she is basically a videographer. She does a lot of recording, and that's where you get your collectibles and other things. There's a whole lot of things for her to record, and you record just little clips of all of them, and you can rewatch them as her little like memoir, which I thought was a really cool element. You can also wander around, talk to the characters. Certain things you'll do or recording them at certain times will trigger other dialogue. Also, you will have times where you can choose to help them with more mundane things, but the different characters, as well as different conversation paths, etc. It's pretty normal for this type of game. But again, there's no like action stuff like you might expect from other ones or more action-oriented elements. Now let's get into the controls, and I have one massive complaint. I play inverted when I'm using a controller. That option is there, but it's grayed out. It's unavailable, and they have actually said, I found it on Steam, by they, I mean the developers, have said that that will come out in the next patch. I'm sorry, but fuck off. Release the game when it's complete. Okay, so admittedly, that's a bit harsh, but while I can accept bugs and glitches at launch, when your game doesn't launch with standard control options, that's a problem. That is something that should absolutely be ironed out before the game launches, let alone the second chapter of your game. Like, it didn't destroy everything for me, but there were definitely times where I was swinging the camera around in ways that I didn't intend to. And it may show in my footage because I didn't have the camera settings that I am used to and that I have been using for way too long now. So it's just natural to me to move the camera in a specific way, and I can't do that in this game. Otherwise, the movement, the camera is smooth if you get to use the controls you want, and when I would remember to use the opposite of what I normally do. The button responses are good. I really didn't run into issues of the controls not responding or doing what I want to apart from the camera because I couldn't use my settings. Now let's get into the graphics and visuals. Don't Nod hasn't really gone for like an intense, hyper-realistic look, at least not in a long time. But I will say this is hands down their best looking game, and the amount of detail they really did put in, even though the characters are not hyper-realistic, but I don't want to say cartoony either, somewhere in between there. But the amount of detail that they added to the characters, Nora has acne and you can really tell. Scrapes, bruises, lips, eyes, all of those things. There is just an insane amount of detail. Eyebrows, hair, just everything like that. They put so much detail into all of that it's actually really impressive. Like, while this game is not hyper-realistic and the world around you is not hyper-realistic, it does kind of have that, again, not quite cartoony look, but also, you know what I mean? It just works, and it looks very good. It fits with the style that Don't Nod has kind of developed for themselves and for their games and their style of games. But this one is without a doubt the most detailed one. Freckles, just everything on all the characters. And then there's the character design and the world design and everything. They really do an awesome job with all of that. They give each of their characters their own unique appearance. You know them kind of by their appearance. They're young, they're kind of dressed how their personality is at the time since they're teens. And they're probably still trying to figure themselves out, but like, it fits them. And then you've got just the world around you does feel older 90s era. Not the wacky 90s era that they sell in like TV shows, but like real 90s shit. Swan's video camera looks like something out of the 90s where they're not quite very small yet. They're still pretty bulky, but they are portable. Nobody's got cell phones. Swan's got a fucking Tamagotchi. There are some moments in the game, and it does kind of work. Like, you see some visual things where you're like, oh man, that was a thing from the 90s, and even the characters point it out. So I did enjoy that, though there were some graphical issues as well. There were definitely some like weird hovering moments, some weird gliding moments. There was some clipping here or there. There were definitely some cheating animations, but you know, I think overall it looked good, and just bringing the 90s to life in the way that they did, I think is very well done. Now, there were a couple of other things I do want to call out at the time. I mean, obviously I pointed out Return of the King syndrome, but also there were a few scenes that just dragged on a bit too long. Like non-interactive scenes, and they just felt like they kept going and kept going and kept going to the point where you're like, okay, I'll come back later, I guess. And I also had some stuttering, but only in tape 1, not in tape 2. But there were a few times where the game like stuttered on things that I was like, oh, I'm kind of surprised by that. There wasn't a lot going on. That having been said, I didn't run into any like game ruining glitches or anything. So let's get into the wrap up. I enjoyed this game. Overall, I did hate the last 2 endings of the like 5 or 6 endings that there are. But overall, I enjoyed the story. I think the gameplay worked for this story because having the crazy intense action sequences, I say intense, but you know, the ones that you're used to from games like Life is Strange, etc. It's not there, and that's different, and it worked for this situation. Now that being said, the state the game is in currently, where like I can't even use the inverted camera, I'm not a big fan of the sequel bait endings. All of those things said, I really enjoyed the game. I don't think it's perfect, but if you like this style of game, I do think there is definitely a good story to experience there. So for fans of these kind of games like myself, yeah, I'm comfortable recommending this. It's not going to get the most glowing recommendation of all time, but I did enjoy it. I do think there are definitely way worse ones out there, but at the same time, there are way better ones. But if you were putting this on a scale, it would definitely be on the better side. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me, how do you feel about sequel bait endings? Or do you like an ending that just kind of ends that story? Or are you one of those people who's like, yeah, I love that cliffhanger, I can't wait to see what's next, even if next never comes? And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.